So, I managed to come 13th at the 2016 Pokemon World Championships, which is awesome. Last year, I came 32nd, so in just a year to go from 32nd to 13th is a huge achievement, and I had put a lot of effort into this tournament and into this team. And I seemed to be ready so much earlier than everyone else. I was ready a month before the tournament, and then there were still people who didn't have teams the day before the tournament, so that was quite amusing. But I did put a lot of effort into this team, so I'm glad I can share this with everyone now. So I'm going to be splitting this report into two videos because it would just be too long otherwise. In the first part, I'm going to focus on the team building, the Pokemon spreads, and good and bad matchups for the team. And then I'll have a second video in case you're curious of how my tournament run went. And then I'll have some shoutouts at the end. So, my team building started off with Icy Wind. So after Poker Alex won the UK Nationals with Icy Wind Cress, I went and looked at every single Pokemon that learned Icy Wind in the hopes of finding a few hidden gems. I did find some, maybe a couple more hidden than others, but that's what I like to do. So there was one Pokemon that stood out way more than the other Pokemon, and that was Rayquaza. So I don't think I've seen a single Icy Wind Rayquaza in any tournaments, or even in practice. So if you saw an Icy Wind Rayquaza just over a month ago on Showdown, hello, that was me. So with Icy Wind, Assault Vest makes a lot of sense. I'll go through the Icy Wind Ray when I come to the Rayquaza spread. So I'll just move on to the next part of the team building, so I don't waste the time here. Next part was picking a water type. So I could have gone with Kyogre, and I was the first successful Rayogre user, but going into practice for Worlds, I just couldn't find a Rayogre team that worked. So I wanted to try and find another water type. So water, apart from Kyogre, is a very unexplored type. I don't think I've seen many water types at all, but it makes a lot of sense with a Rayquaza, because you can just KO Groudons with your water type move if you just switch in the Airlock Rayquaza. So I wanted to pick a water type, and these were the 6 I narrowed it down to. Yes, there is a Mantike there. I prefer it way more than Mantine. You can KO Groudons with Mantine, and you can't really with Mantike, but what's Groudon going to do back to your Mantike? And Y-Guard and Tailwind are great moves. So, I had the water type, potential water types, and I needed to pick another restricted Pokemon, because it doesn't really make sense to make a team of 5 and then add your last restricted Pokemon. That's not how you should team build in this meta. Always start with at least 3 Pokemon, 2 of them being the two restricted. So I had the Mega Rayquaza already with the Assault Vest, and I had been trying out Rayquaza Groudon for quite a while, but I don't think it works so well with an Assault Vest. You kind of need the Life Orb on the Rayquaza Groudon core, so I ended up picking Xerneas. And the nice addition with this, because with the Assault Vest, you get a special defense boost on your Rayquaza, and with the Power Herb, which every Xerneas should run, you get the special defense boost on the Geomancy. So already my 2 restricted Pokemon are very bulky. On the special side though, so the water type that immediately makes the most sense would be Gyarados, because then you can intimidate the physical attackers, and then your restricted Pokemon become even more bulky. You effectively get +1, +1, and +1, +2 for the 2 restricteds. That's not entirely how Intimidate works, but it's kind of. And you do lose your defenses for Dragon's Ascent anyway, but you still start off super bulky, so it does make sense. Now this was the core I started off with, so I had originally just the 1 Pokemon with Rayquaza, then turned it into this core of 3. And I did discuss this with my good friend Barry Anderson when we were discussing X-Ray. I was mentioning how X-Ray Gyarados could be a good core, and then I think maybe the same day it was either the same day or the day after, my other good friend Jamie Keane said, what about X-Ray Gyarados? So that must have been some sort of sign, I guess. Like, I hadn't tested the core that much at that point, but my 2 main team building partners were both fearing it at the same time, so I thought I should explore it further. So the next part of the team building process, I focused on individual Pokemon that would be trouble. And Bronzong immediately looks like the main culprit at this point. I can't really touch it unless I've got like Overheat with Rayquaza, but if they're heat proof then I can't really do much at all. So Bronzong was an issue, and there is a very, very obvious partner for this core for Bronzongs, and that is Scruffty, because you can hit them with Dark type moves rather than Fire type moves, so the heat proof won't make a difference. You get another Intimidate, which is also really good at the moment, because I've got 2 specially defensive Pokemon that really appreciate Intimidates, and there's no Milotic or Bisharps at the moment, so maybe if I'd have won Worlds there would have been, but 2 Intimidates is very good for these specially defensive restricted Pokemon. And I wanted to be able to beat Bronzong's. Blind Hypnosis and Gravity Hypnosis was a thing at this point. Hopefully it'll die out now. But yeah, Lumberry on Scruffty does ensure that I beat the Bronzongs because they can't Hypnosis me. And then I can just 2-shot them with Knockoff. So the Lumberry went on Scruffty. Now I was theorying whether I wanted to Mega Gyarados at this point. But if I put Scruffty onto the team, I think 2 Dark types wouldn't really make that much sense. So I didn't have to put the Gyarados onto the Gyarados. So I could go with another item. I ended up going with Citrus Berry, because with the Citrus Berry, Gyarados actually gets surprising bulk. You will be surprised how bulky the Gyarados is if you try it out. Then I have these 4. The next Pokemon, I need to beat Smeargle. I can't really beat Smeargle. I got Fake Out with Scrafty, but most Smeargles are paired with the Xerneas, so that's not a good idea. I needed something that really hard countered Smeargle, or at least the Dark Voids. So Whimsicott was my pick, because then I got the Prankster Safeguard, and that helps me against Scarf Smeargles as well. I did have the Fake Out from Scrafty for the Scarf variant, but I didn't want to lead Scrafty against the Xerneases, so Whimsicott made a lot of sense with the Prankster Safeguard, and Sash also makes a lot of sense on Whimsicott. Even though I've gone with a really bulky team, and now I've got this really frail Mon with a Focus Sash, it made a lot of sense purely because of Smeargles. If Smeargle wasn't a thing, then Whimsicott would not be on the team, but I kind of need it, so it's there. And then the final thing that I ended up needing was something for Steels, because Mawils, Ferrothorns, and kind of still Bronzongs, somewhat, were a problem for this team, so I needed something to be able to hit them hard, and then I get another Intimidate if I put an Arcanine onto the team. So I've got 3 Intimidates, and now I can hit the Steel types with the Arcanine. Now, I've seen people use Red Card Arcanine, and that makes some sense, but I don't like Red Card as an item. I don't like its unpredictability, because if they can work out you've got Red Card and they just don't Dazzling Gleam, then it's useless, and you can't play around it at all. So I ended up going with Life Orb on my Arcanine for extra KOing power. There's some KOs you can get with Life Orb that you can't get without the boosting power of it if you had, say, Red Card. So I wanted Life Orb. So that was the team of 6. So I'm going to go into the spreads now, starting off with the Rayquaza. Prepare yourselves, this is an awesome spread. One of my favourite spreads I've ever come up with. There it is. So you probably weren't expecting as much special bulk as I have. Most people, when they're running Assault Vest, only just live +2 Dazzling Gleam, and then have max speed. I really wouldn't recommend having Positive Nature max speed, because you have to put some EVs into bulk. You end up having almost no attack investment, and then you do no damage. Like, it's really, you can really see how little damage you're doing. So I don't recommend Positive max speed natured Rayquazas with Assault Vest. You can get away with it with Adamant though, because you've got 180 base attack. If you run Adamant, just that 10% boost is enough. As you can see, I still KO, I still 2-hit KO all but the bold Primal Kyogres, and even then it's a roll. So with just the 4 Adamant, you do 2-hit KO anything that's built to survive 2 Precipice Blades. And that's the main calc that I was going for. I didn't feel like I needed any more attack. A lot of the times, anyway, the Rayquaza would come in from the back and just extreme speed things that have only just survived my Xerneas. So you don't actually need that much more attack investment with the Rayquaza. 2-shotting the P-Blade surviving things is enough, because not many things run bulkier than that. There's only like Cresses, pretty much, that run that much bulk. So 4 attack Adamant is enough. You don't really need more. With the Waterfall, you probably won't KO Groudons though, but you can't really lose to a Groudon with this Rayquaza. Hidden Power Ice is probably the main move that they would have to hit you, and that does about 20% to you with the Assault Vest if you're in the Strong Winds. That happened to me in one of the games. I got Hidden Power Iced. I think I was at -1 defense, and it did about 20%. So you don't need to OHKO the Groudons. I did have Aqua Tail at one point over Waterfall, and I think you need 28 attack with Aqua Tail to KO the no-bulk Groudons, but you can miss, for one, and you don't need to OHKO them pretty much. Like, there's very few times you actually need to straight up OHKO the Groudon. It's if they will KO your partner otherwise, but you wall the Groudons otherwise. You don't need to knock them out straight away. So I was comfortable not knocking them out with Waterfalls. Against the no bulk ones, it has the tiniest chance. Against the max bulk ones, it can do about 75%, and that can be underwhelming. But if you're intimidated as well, it's still a 2-shot. You don't need to OHKO the Groudons, which is fine. But Icy Wind, that KOs Mega Salamence in 2 shots, even if they're not naive, which is really, really big. And that's how I've come up with the speed investment I have. With 100 speed EVs, it's 1 point faster than what you need as a normal Rayquaza to outspeed a Mega Salamence at -1. So that's how I come up with the speed. I could have gone 1 point slower, but I added an extra speed point so I don't speed tie with my Arcanine. So with that, with just the 4 attack investment with Adamant, and then the speed stat that I wanted hit with the 100 speed EVs, the leftover special bulk, I wanted to have as much chance as possible to survive a Life Orb, Mega Rayquaza, Draco Meteor with 28 special attack, because that's how much you need to KO no bulk Groudons, and you really shouldn't really run much more special attack than that. So that was my benchmark, and the best I could do was survive 87% of the time. And I say best you can do. That's amazing. Surviving a Mega Rayquaza's Draco Meteor with a Life Orb, like, that's crazy. That shouldn't be possible with a Rayquaza, and with that special bulk, it is. And another amazing calc, this I don't think this has ever come into play, but just the theory behind it, a -3 special defense, so if you Dragon Ascended 3 times with your Rayquaza in the strong winds, you will still survive a Primal Kyogre Ice Beam. That's crazy. This Rayquaza is so bulky. It's got the same special defense stat as a max positive natured Cresselia. So a 252, 252 plus Cresselia. It's got the same bulk as that with better typing. And an ability that takes away some of its weakness. It's crazy how bulky this Rayquaza is. And with triple Intimidate on the physical side as well, this thing just doesn't die. You do reduce your defenses with Dragon Descent, but you're not always Dragon Descenting. A lot of the times, I use Icy Wind a lot. I think Icy Wind is probably my second most used move on this Rayquaza. Extreme Speed is the first. Dragon Descent's third. Waterfall's last. I only go for that with Groudons or maybe for flinches, but you don't usually lower your defenses with Dragon Descent, and when you are Dragon Descenting, it's to kill things. It's to pick off the things that have taken damage already. So it's amazing how bulky this Rayquaza is. You may think that the special bulk I put into it is unnecessary, but just the fact that I can live the Life Orb Draco is reason enough. And with Icy Wind, I have an excuse to be able to put all that investment in. As a Mega Rayquaza, you hit 148, so you do outspeed Adamant, max speed Adamant Rayquazas before they Mega Evolve, so you can use that to determine whether they're Adamant or Jolly, because almost no Rayquazas don't run max speed Adamant or Jolly, apart from this one, because this one's special. But hit 148, you do underspeed max speed Groudons as well, and you kind of want to, so that you can figure out if they're max speed or not, because they can't do anything to you. If they Eruption, it does nothing. If they Hidden Power Ice, it does nothing. If they're physical, they can't do anything. Fire Punch does nothing. So it's actually a good thing underspeeding Groudons, I think, because then you can work out their speed stats, and then at the same time work out whether they're bulky or not, which is good for best of 3s. Like, I could just go on and on about this Rayquaza. I had it theoried for so long, and I finally managed to make a team around it that it just suits it perfectly. If you don't want to try out the team, just try out this Rayquaza. You'll be amazed how bulky it is, how many hits it survives is just amazing. Just use this Rayquaza. Try out this Rayquaza. It's so good. So the next Pokemon is Xerneas. So I could have gone with a max speed one. Because I've got the Intimidates, I could have probably got away with it. But the point of the team was to be as bulky as possible. So I've got a bulky Xerneas spread here. It's quite a unique one as well. The defensive investment I went with was to survive a +1, reasonably invested Adamant Groudon's Fire Punch. Because I've got 3 Intimidators, I have to bring an Intimidate to a match, so if a Groudon Swords Dances, I can very easily get it back down to +1 and then live. And I'll survive the Precipice Blades. It's actually a roll for max attack Adamant for Precipice Blades, and +2 to KO, but if they're neutral natured, then I'll pretty much always survive. I think it's like the tiniest, it's the tiniest chance, as you can see there. That's just a single Precipice Blaze without the +2, so I should always survive that. And then I got some special defense investment as well, so that I can win the Xerneas Mirror, although a lot of people are running bulky Xerneas now to beat just the 4 HP one. I'll be able to survive the Moonblasts with that defense investment. They can They do have a tiny chance to KO me, two-hit KO me with the Moonblast, but I was comfortable with that investment. Because I wanted that special attack, that hits the bump, as Barry would say, which gives you 2 stat points for ATVs. So I went with that, and that was also crucial with some helping hand calcs. And I went with 92 speed investment, so that hits 131 speed. So that was a completely unique speed, I thought. And it's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to know if I outsped or undersped the Xerneas, because you can speed size. A lot of people either run max speed or 4 speed, or maybe just enough to outspeed Salamence at -1, or outspeed Smeagol's. This was a completely unique speed stat. It does something. It's not crazy. It's not just for the sake of it, not just for random speed creep or anything. What it does is it outspeeds Pokemon that outspeed Weavile at -1. So that previous bit in brackets. So pretty much Mega Gengas is my main focus. I won't outspeed Crobats at -1, but I won't lead Xerneas against a Crobat. I have a completely different tactics. I have completely different tactics against Crobats, so I don't need to outspeed Crobats at -1, and they'll be tailwinding anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. The main focus was Mega Gengar, and most Mega Gengas only just outspeed Weavile. They don't go for max speed because they need that tiny bit of bulk to survive the Brave Birds from Talonflame. So, in theory, I would always be able to Geomancy in front of a -1 Mega Gengar and then take less damage from the Sludge Bomb. Maybe now that Mega Gengar's become a thing because of winning Worlds, people will start to run max speeds and with like Shadow Ball and stuff like that, so that they can counter the other Mega Gengars, or so that they can creep the other ones. So maybe this speed stat is not so usable anymore, but my theory held true at Worlds, so I was comfortable with this speed stat. Another thing that I found out on the day of competing, so there was no chance of changing it, you underspeed, max speed, neutral nature, Venusaur by 1 point. Venusaur is 132, so if they're running a Sash Venusaur, you can get sleep powdered if they're in the sun and you've Geomancied. So I wouldn't now recommend that speed stat on the Xerneas. I would probably go a little bit faster. Probably at least 3 more speed stats, speed stat points higher, because then you can outspeed max speed Mega Gengars, which will probably become a thing again. But if you're at that speed, you're so close to outspeeding Smeagol that you might as well just go that little bit more so that you outspeed the Smeagols. Most people do that, but I think it's worthwhile if you're going to increase the speed. So I've actually come up with an alternative spread to what my Worlds one was. This is probably what I would use in the future if I was to carry on using this team, purely because of Mega Gengar becoming more popular. So the new speed stat hits 140, it outspeeds Smeagol's. The only problem will be a lot of people will run Pokemon at that speed because they want to outspeed Smeagol, but if you're outspeeding Mega Gengar, you're so close to outspeeding Smeagol, so you might as well. But just, you will be risking speed ties, and you have to sacrifice a bit of bulk. The special attack stat is necessary for some of the calcs, so I've taken a little bit out of the special bulk and a little bit out of HP as well. So it is a roll now for the Fire Punch, the previous Fire Punch to KO you. It's only 6%, so it's acceptable. And then Precious Blades has a slightly better chance of 2-hit KOing you, or OHKOing you with the Swords Dance. But the most significant one is now opposing Xerneas Moonblasts. With the reduction in special defense, you will survive the 2 Moonblasts 56% of the time. So it is in your favor, but that is also with Xerneas that aren't just Timid Max. With Timid Max, it's a lot more in their favor to 2-hit KO you, but you shouldn't run 252, 252. That's just lazy and bad. So you should be facing at least the investment that I put for the Xerneas Moonblasts against you, and it is in your favor to survive. But with the special attack, you can't really change it because of the 2 helping hand calcs that I've got there. You always KO a 4 HP Xerneas with just a +2 Moonblast if they am Geoed, so that's always good, and you can afford to go lower with that, but because of these 2 calcs, you need the 68. It reduces the amount of the chance of KOing so much with just 8 less EVs. So the main 2 things are Mega Marwals and Groudons. Groudons, not so much. It's just nice knowing that you could KO with a helping hand. Both of these things, both of these calcs with Marwal and Groudon are 80% chance to KO. which is reasonable, and it's you should go with it. Helping Hand Moonblast on Mawile is crucial though, because you need to be able to Helping Hand Moonblast the Mawile in the rain. That's big, and that's just giving you a clue of what has Helping Hand. You need to be able to knock out the Mawile in the rain with the Xerneas, so having that much special attack is crucial, and I wouldn't go lower. So that's the Xerneas. The Helping Hander is the Arcanine. So a lot of people have been running Safeguard Arcanine. When Arcanine became a thing, it became a thing pretty much as I was making it on this team, which was a good and bad thing. Good because everyone was running Safeguard on their Arcanine, so I could bluff Safeguard with my Arcanine, so they just wouldn't use Smeargle, or they wouldn't use Dark Void against the Arcanine if they led Smeargle, which was really good. That freed up a slot for my Arcanine, and I was able to put Helping Hand onto it, which allowed me to make up for the lack of attack investment so that I could have all the bulk. And it made a lot of sense, and it's very crucial for Mawile in Rain for Helping Hand. Just that one scenario is reason enough to have Helping Hand on Arcanine over something like Safeguard, or even Protect. Like, I had to have Roar. Flare Blitz and Extreme Speed are completely necessary, but if a Pokemon can learn Roar, it's probably going to know Roar if it's with me. Roar is just so good against Trick Room. I don't have a Pokemon that can work so well in Trick Room, so having Roar to roar away the Trick Room is really good. Having a Pokemon that resists Xerneas that can roar away a Geode Xerneas, Arcanine being Fire type, is really useful. So just Roar on Arcanine is amazing, and I wouldn't change it for something like Protect. Flare Blitz with a Life Orb hits really hard. It will always KO a Bronzong unless they're heat proof, and that's really big. No Bronzongs will be running Relax Max Defense, but it's just nice knowing that if you know that they're Levitate, then you can always one-shot the Bronzongs without stuff like Intimidate. And against Mega Mawiles also, when they're out of the rain, or if you're in the airlock, then it's a roll just in your favour to KO the Mawiles, which is, well, it's the best you can do because it's max attack. You can't go any higher, but it's nice knowing that you can KO Mawiles more often than not if you have to Flare Blitz them with, say, like your Xerneas or Rayquaza that could take an Iron Head or play rough. And it can also KO Xerneas, no bulk Xerneas, but again, don't expect no bulk Xerneas. In the Sun, I don't have any Sun, but what was the best partner to Xerneas? Groudons. So it's more like they can be in the Sun as well. And against stuff like Kangaskhan's, it's always a KO, so you can use their Groudon against you, so long as you don't have your Rayquaza in, of course. But in the Sun, the Flare Blitz hits really, really hard. Now, I didn't feel like I needed to go with Jolly, because I'm not going to be Flare Blitzing a Groudon. And I also have 3 moves with more than +1 priority. 1 -6 priority. But 3 moves with big priority differences. So I don't know how necessary the speed is, but I had it because Arcanine was becoming a thing, so I wanted to at least speed tie with the Arcanines, or if they're Jolly, then they're weaker, so it's fine. So I was fine going with the 252 Adamant, and I needed that extra power anyway, just so I could ensure that I could always KO the Bronzongs. And if you're Jolly, I don't think you can KO the Mawiles at -1. So that's pretty big. That, like, Adamant's max makes a lot of sense to me. I wouldn't run Jolly Arcanine with this team, even with the Life Orb, because you need it with those calcs. Like, on the defensive side, you need -2 to survive Precipice Blades from Adamant Groudons, and it's close with neutral Groudons, but you shouldn't ever expect to survive a +1, or -1, sorry, Precipice Blades from a Groudon. Always get it to -2 so you can survive. And you'll survive a Life Orb Mega Rayquaza if you've intimidated it. Like, you'll survive most things if you've intimidated it. But because I've went with 4 HP, 252, 252, I haven't got any bulk, so things can 2-shot me. Like a Hyper Voice from Mega Salamence, it will almost certainly 2-shot me, which is pretty bad. But I didn't want any less attack because I wanted the absolute guarantee on the Bronzongs and a good chance on the Mawiles. Reducing the attack stat on the Arcanine by 4 EVs takes off 4 actual damage points from Bronzongs, which is crazy. So, like, I definitely wanted the max attack. And the max speed was just for potential speed ties and stuff. I haven't really tested around with the speeds with Arcanine so much, so I don't know how necessary it is, and a lot of the times I am priority moving, so it may not be so necessary. So I have actually come up with another alternative spread for Arcanine, completely untested. This is just theory, again. So with this new defensive investment, you can actually live -1 Precipice Blades, which is really big. If they're neutral natured, you'll always live. If they're reasonably invested, you should always live. Like, there's a decent chance if they're max attack, but they shouldn't be max attack. As I've already said, you can survive a Choice Band Mega Rayquaza Dragon's Ascent. Now, not just a Life Orb one, you should survive a Choice Band Dragon Ascent if you've intimidated them, which is pretty big, but not very common. But now you will be able to take 2 Hyper Voices from reasonably invested special attack on Mega Salamence. So that's much better. The speed stat puts you 1 point faster than 4 speed Xerneas. Maybe you want to go a tiny bit more, just to guarantee that you creep that, because the idea is that you work out if they're super bulky with their Xerneas, or if they've got some speed and are slightly less bulky. So I don't know how necessary that would be, whether you actually need the max speed, whether you need just above Smeargle or something like that. I wouldn't have thought you'd need just above Smeargle, because you'd be extreme speeding them anyway if you're low HP. The 188 HP also puts you at a nice Life Orb number, puts you at 189, so that you take a less Life Orb recoil, which is always nice. I always like those tiny little calcs. And you keep max attack, because I think that max attack with this team is very crucial, because you don't want to lose any percentage chance of KOing Mega Mawals at -1. So you can test around with this Arcanine. I just went with the 252 one, because that was what I was comfortable with in testing, and I just wanted to guarantee with speed ties and stuff. But this spread could maybe be better for the team, because the Arcanine didn't feel very bulky. You are KOing yourself a lot of the time if you're using Flare Blitz and with the Life Orb as well, but maybe that extra bulk with the team being so bulky anyway will help it out. I don't know, you can go and test it out. I'm probably not going to for a while, but you can go and test it out. So, next Pokemon, Gyarados. So, with a Citrus Berry, this Gyarados is actually super bulky. It can take 2 Double Edges, -1 from a Kangaskhan, which is actually surprisingly bulky. It's got pretty decent special defense, but awful defense. With Intimidate, that makes up for it, and I've got loads of Intimidate in the back anyway. But I put a lot into defense so that I can survive the Kang Double Edges. And in the Strong Winds, you can also survive Thunders. Definitely not outside of the Strong Winds. You won't take any electric moves if you haven't got the Strong Winds up, but if you've got the Strong Winds, you should survive every single one. I haven't done the Calcon not intimidated Wild Charge from Thundurus. That might KO, but I wouldn't have thought so, and that's super uncommon anyway. But with the defense, it's just basically a water Cresselia. That's how I've treated it. Because I've gone with Icy Wind and Thunder Wave, the same combination that won UK Nats, I've treated this like the Cresselia. It's not supposed to be a super powerhouse that hits really hard with Waterfall. Because a lot of people were saying with Gyarados that you should have all the investment so that you guarantee the KO on max bulk, max defense bulk Groudons, which I don't think is very necessary. Pretty much for the same reason that Rayquaza didn't need all the attack investment. You don't need to KO the Groudons. They're not going to do much back to you unless they have Thunderbolt, and that's very uncommon. And if they have Thunderbolt, you can be in the Strong Winds and survive. And you need to be in the Strong Winds, you need to have your Rayquaza out so that you can KO the Groudons anyway with Waterfall. So, like, I don't think you need all the investment so you can guarantee the KOs on those Groudons. I've gone with just KOing 4 HP Groudons. It's a 93% chance. That calc 97% looks a bit lower than it would be for 93%, but between the lowest roll and the second lowest roll, it's a big jump, so it is actually 93% chance to KO no bulk Groudons, so that was what I was comfortable with, because then I could put the rest into bulk. The speed lets it outspeed Kangaskhan's at -1 with 1 point extra, so you go with that creep. I always like the creeps. That sounds weird, but you know, speed creeping is very crucial, I think. I don't like just going for just enough. I always like going 1 or 2 points more, because then you can guarantee that you outspeed those things as well. And a lot of Groudons do go to 112 speed. This hits 113, so I think having that 1 point extra is actually very big because of those Groudons going to that speed. So, Roar as well, you probably noticed. That's the second Roar. Arcanine had Roar as well. This is maybe going over the top. Roar is my favourite move in Pokemon. in VGC. And I've always, unless I've had Trick Room on the team, I pretty much always had Roar. So maybe this is going over the top, having a second Roar for the first time on a team. But I think it's quite necessary, because like I said, I don't have a true Trick Room counter. So I think that having both Roars is necessary, because I don't often take Arcanine and Gyarados to the same match. So if I want to stop Trick Room, then I need to have at least one Roarer. And if I didn't have them Roar on both, then I might not have one, and then Trick Room would go up and I'd probably lose. So I think it's necessary for the team to have both Roars, even if it's like going over the top a little bit. So something else I've noticed with this Gyarados is that a significant amount of times I would Waterfall a Pokemon with not much HP, and it would survive with what must be a lot of the times 1 HP. So I've considered running Aqua Tail on this Gyarados just for a little bit extra power, because you can notice tiny lack of power, but I think a better alternative would probably be to just up the attack investment just a little bit, because then you don't miss. Aqua Tail is like significantly stronger than Waterfall, but I think Waterfall's better purely because you've got some Power Flinch there. Because you've got Thunder Wave and Waterfall, that's a 20% chance to flinch and a 25% chance to paralyze. So that can come into play a decent amount of times. And with just the tiniest bit more attack investment, you will be getting the KOs that I have missed out on a lot of times. So with the extra attack investment, you will always KO no bulk Groudons, but like you were probably always going to anyway. And you only lose a tiny bit of chance for Kangaskhan to KO you. It's 7%, that's nothing. And most Kangaskhan's run enough bulk to survive low kicks, so they don't have max attack anyway. So I think that like if you're going to use this team, definitely use this spread over the other one. The extra attack will be significant. So that was the Gyarados. Next, onto the Scruffty. So I've got a nice moveset here of knock off, low kick, fake out, Roar. Because Roar is my favourite move. I think I should have it on every single Pokemon. No, I'm just kidding. It has Quick Guard instead. 3 Roars would be over the top, and Roar on Scruffty wouldn't make any sense at all, because it's supposed to hit the Bronzongs anyway. It's not supposed to roar them out, it's supposed to hit them. So with that attack investment, I almost always KO the very sassy Bronzongs with 2 knockoffs, factoring in the fact that they lose an item. But I wanted to focus more on the special defense investment. I did originally have an adamant one, but then Blue convinced me to change it to careful so that I could live Primal Kyogre Water Spouts with reasonable special attack investment. You shouldn't really ever expect more special attack investment than that, so I would always expect to live Water Spouts, and I don't think I ever got KO'd by a Water Spout from a Primal Kyogre at full HP, so I think that's a very nice benchmark for the special defense. Got 12 speed because I wanted to creep any potential other Scrafties, and it still hits 80 speed, which underspeeds Cresselia, which is nice, because then you can guarantee that you knock them off in Trick Room. In the defense, you might live Double Edges, like you should live Double Edges from Salamence, and a lot of the times you'll live Dragon Descents from Focus Sash Mega Rayquazas. So I think that the defenses are rounded out very nicely. You could probably do with a little bit more defense just to guarantee that you live the Rayquazas, but I don't think that's so necessary, because you've got so much anti-Rayquaza on your team already with the Xerneas and your own Rayquaza that can live anything they can throw at you, so, and you've got all the Intimidates anyway, so you'll probably be able to switch in another Intimidator and survive the Dragon's Ascent, so I don't think you would need that much more defense. You may need a little bit more attack, because it can be a roll on the sassy Bronzongs, whether you KO them with 2 knockoffs, and you definitely won't KO the relaxed ones, which is a shame. But the main reason for this attack is that a knockoff from this Scrafty in combination with a Moonblast +2 from my Xerneas will KO pretty much every single Bronzong, and that was the main calc I went for, not the 2-shot with the knockoffs. I wanted the knockoff with the Moonblast to KO the Bronzongs. So that's what I've achieved with this attack stat. I went with low kick over high jump kick because accuracy. The only inaccurate move on this team is Icy Wind, and that's brilliant. I love not missing moves or not having to rely on hitting moves. It's so much better than running 90% accurate moves if you can help it. And gravity is also a thing, so high jump kick would be useless in gravity, which I definitely don't want. So low kick is better because it reaches 100 base power against Kangaskhan's, so you don't really need that much more. I don't need to Oko the Kangaskhans, because it's actually better to leave them on the field and just constantly intimidate them and knock out their partner, because then they're useless. So I think it's better doing a nice chunk to Kangaskhans, put them in extreme speed range so I can pick them off when I need, or if they switch out to reset the intimidates, rather than just straight up KO them, give them a free switch into something fresh. So I prefer low kick for mainly that reason. Fake out is obvious, free moves with the Geomancy potential is just brilliant, and Quick Guard is there to stop any prankster stuff from like Encore, from Whimsicott, T-Waves from Thunderous, Brave Birds, Extreme Speeds. Like, you know how Quick Guard works. It's very nice on Scruffty. You wouldn't think so because it can't stop most fake outs, but it's not there to stop fake outs. You can stop fake outs in Trick Room, which is nice. Even though I don't have Trick Room, it would have to be using their own Trick Room against them, but just stopping all the priority moves that could hit the Xerneas, could hit the Rayquaza, is just very, very nice. So we're almost through it. Last Pokemon is the Whimsicott. Pretty boring EV spreads, and I would say very standard moves as well. I didn't feel the need for any extra bulk, because I got a Focus Sash as well, and the only significant calc with a Focus Sash is a Kangaskhan Double Edge, and with an Intimidate, I pretty much always live anyway, so I didn't feel the need for any extra bulk. I could have taken ATVs out of Special Attack and put 4 into the defenses, but you lose some damage on Salamence and Rayquaza if you take out 8 EVs from the Special Attack, so I don't think that's worth it. It's better to do a little bit more damage to the Pokemon you will be hitting. So I've got Moonblast, Safeguard, Tailwind, and Encore. I like Pokemon that support but can still attack. So Moonblast is necessary. I wouldn't want a Whimsicott that doesn't have any attacking moves. And Moonblast does a significant chunk to Salamence, Emray, and even Xerneas as well because of the Fairy Aura. But Safeguard is the reason that this Whimsicott is on the team. Smeargle is annoying. You need to stop Dark Voids, and Safeguard stops Dark Voids. Prankster Safeguard stops Scarf Dark Voids, so that's pretty much why I have the Whimsicott. I have Tailwind as well because I like having Tailwind on a team. I don't usually feel comfortable with a team if I don't have it, because I can't match opposing Tailwinds. Even though I have like Thunder Wave, that would cancel out their Tailwinds pretty nicely, but Icy Winds don't do that unless you do 2 Icy Winds, so I like having Tailwind on the team anyway. Like, it might have been better to have Protect on the Whimsicott instead of Tailwind. I used Tailwind a little bit, but Safeguard, Encore, and Moonblast were used a lot more, so I could have maybe had Protect over Tailwind on the Whimsicott. Something you may have noticed now that we've got to the last Pokemon. Only my Xerneas had Protect. Now, that wasn't me just trying to be special and saying, oh, Protect is a bad move, you don't need to have it. Only the Xerneas needs Protect. Everything else should be supporting the Xerneas. That's kind of the point of the team. Even the Rayquaza is a support Pokemon, even though it's a restricted Pokemon. It's a support Rayquaza because it uses Icy Wind a lot. So it's supposed to support the Xerneas. Everything else, your Xerneas should either be attacking, or Geomancing, getting ready to attack, or protecting so that the partner Pokemon can set up the Xerneas into a position that the Xerneas can sweep. So you don't want to be protecting your partner Pokemon. It should always be doing something to try and help your Xerneas. So that's why I feel like not having Protect on all these Pokemon is fine, because they're always doing something. If I had to put Protect onto another Pokemon, it would be this Whimsicott, though. Mainly because of Fake Outs. Because I don't have Protect on the Whimsicott, they can just fake me out and break my Sash, and that's not good. So I would have Protect if I could, but I like Tailwind. I really like having Tailwind. So that's the Whimsicott. I'm not going to say any more about it. It's a very standard Whimsicott, and I've already said a lot about all the Pokemon. So I'll move on to the matchups. I've specified 3 relevant good and bad matchups for this team, just to give you some idea of how it works. So, first matchup, the best possible reasonable matchup for this team would be Groudon Yveltal. Something I didn't mention about the Rayquaza, because you've got such high HP investment and such low attack, you actually always live a Life Orb Foul Play from an Yveltal. And that's really big. That puts the matchup even further in your favour. So you shouldn't really ever lose that matchup. If it's the standard Yveltal Groudon, or just a bit of a variation, you should always win. It should be so far in your favour that only crits can save your opponent. You should always win that matchup. The next best reasonable matchup for you would be Rayquaza Groudon. Because the Groudon's special, it can barely touch you if you can get a Geomancy up, and that's very easy with speed control. The Rayquaza is almost always Life Orb, and that helps you because you intimidate it so much it can't do much. You survive its Draco Meteor most of the time, or you can just switch into Xerneas if you want, and you can KO it in one shot rather than the Sash variants, which can survive at least one hit and then hit back. Having Life Orb actually puts it in your favour because you can now one-shot the Rays. And the other matchup I want to talk about is the Groudon Xerneas, and I would say it is a positive matchup for you, but there is just a tiny little detail. It's a good matchup for you if you don't bring your Whimsicott. If you can afford not to bring your Whimsicott, it's a very good matchup for you. The only problem is the Smeargle. Because of the Smeargles, if they bring it and you don't bring your Whimsicott, it's bad for you if they hit their Dark Voids. If they're bringing their Smeargle, you have to bring your Whimsicott. If you bring the Whimsicott and they bring their Smeargle, it's still a good matchup for you. If you bring your Whimsicott and they didn't bring their Smeargle, it's a bad matchup for you. So what I've had to do, because of Arcanine's running Safeguard that everyone had been using in practice, I was able to use Arcanine to bluff Safeguard so that they wouldn't use it. And also, I would have Whimsicott in the top left of my battle box, so that the first thing that opponents saw on Team Preview was the Whimsicott, so they wouldn't want to bring Smeargle against the potential Safeguards. So that's how I played that. It was a little bit risky, but I think it pays off. Most people didn't bring Smeargle, and if they did, it was usually in a game 2 of a best of 3. That was my theory anyway. In a game 1 against big teams, if I led my 4 Pokemon that I would normally bring to that matchup, and they see that it wasn't Whimsicott, then they would bring Smeargle into game 2, because I wouldn't be able to safeguard away their Dark Voids. Regardless of whether they won or lost, I would think that they would bring their Smeargle because they would think that they could Dark Void. And then I would lead the Whimsicott, and then I would safeguard, and then everything would be fine. That was my theory anyway. And I didn't actually really get to bring it into play until Worlds, and I'll talk about that in my tournament run. So, some bad matchups. My main theoretical bad matchup going in was Mawile with Kyogre. Because the main way of hitting Mawile is Arcanine. If they've got Rain Up, I can't really hit the Mawile. So that was my most theoretical bad matchup for this team. And the way I theoried beating it was let Mawile Iron Head my Xerneas. Yeah, that was my tactic against that kind of team. Because I've got all the Intimidates, I can double Intimidate them all. I can lead Xerneas and an Intimidator, and I can switch the Intimidator and get another Intimidate on the Mawile, and I'll live the Iron Head, not comfortably, it does a bit over half, but I'll be able to get the Geomancy up. So usually I would leave Scruffty and Xerneas, switch in the Arcanine, scare the Mawile into their partner switching into Kyogre to get the Rain, and helping hand Moonblast the Mawile for the hopeful KO. I say hopeful because that's why I need the special attack investment. It's an 80% chance to KO Mawiles. If they've got some special bulk, it's even less. So that's why it's such a bad matchup. There's no guarantee that you'll KO the Mawiles unless they're running negative special defense natures, which doesn't really make any sense, or they haven't IV bred properly. But yeah, that's why it's such a bad matchup, because you can Flare Blitz the Mawile in Airlock, but then you don't have your Geomancy, and then you've lost a lot of your firepower. So it was a very awkward matchup in theory, and I did get a bit of practice against it, so I did work out my matchup. But the best matchup for me was to go with at least an 80% chance with a helping hand. That's not the best, but it worked out somewhat. Next worst matchup is Mega Gengar with Kyogre. Now that's a very, very bad thing, because that's going to be popping up everywhere because it won Worlds. So I would say that something needs to change, because the Gengar and Kyogre won Worlds and will be everywhere, something needs to change in this team to beat Mega Gengar. So don't just take the 6 Pokemon and that's it. You will need to change something, have some sort of tech to beat that Mega Gengar. Because if it didn't have Will-O-Wisp, you'll be fine. The Rayquaza beats it easy, because they can't do anything. But because they have Will-O-Wisp, they can just Will-O-Wisp the Ray, and then you are useless against that Gengar. So that's a big, big, big problem, and something you will need to change about this team if you're going to copy it. If you're going to use it just straight up, you'll probably lose to Wolf's team. So, other bad matchup, one that doesn't really pop up that much, is Kyogre and Xerneas. It's not that bad, but it's because they can match my Geomancy, and then they can also spam Water Moves. The KO and Kyogre's is the worst thing, because I don't have a single super effective move against it. So the best thing I use is either my own Xerneas, which they can match with their Xerneas, or my Rayquaza, which they can do a lot of damage with their Xerneas against my Rayquaza. So, can you notice a pattern here? My good matchups are all against Groudon. My bad matchups are all against Kyogre. So if you can think of something for the team that can beat Mega Gengar and Kyogre in one, that would be amazing. I haven't yet theoried it to that point yet, because I was focusing so much on the Marwell Kyogre that I missed the Gengar Kyogre, and that hurt me a little bit in Worlds, but there we go. Those are some matchups. I'm going to leave the video there, at least this first part of the video, because it's gone on way too long already. I will have a second part up, which will be my tournament run, so go analysing all my matches throughout the tournament. So, thanks for watching.